and welcome to Round Robin. This is a show where we talk to different people in Hampton to let residents know of things that are going on, or really to get into a little more detail about some of the items that are in the news. Today we're going to talk to the City Assessor, Brian Gordineer, and Brian is going to do an overview for us of the recent reassessments. Residents should be getting their postcards in the mail, letting them know the value of their home and how it's changed. And really we're going to go into some detail and talk about what that means for the city, what it means to residents, and what they can learn from this process. So welcome, Brian. We're glad to have you here.
Hello. Well, we have just indeed completed our general reassessment. It's an annual program of reassessment, and we do all 50,000 properties throughout the city. And this year, about 83% of property owners will be getting a change of assessment notice.
Now that's really different. If I remember last year, the number was smaller, wasn't it?
Yes, it was approximately half. There has been considerably more market evidence for us this year. Not as far as sales volume, but those sales that have come through have given us further evidence of a declining real estate market, at least in residential. Little different results in multifamily, but similarly declining in commercial as well, to a lesser degree.
All right, so the big picture, you assessed 50,000 parcels, and what is the overview of how those numbers shook out?
The value of the land book, of the City of Hampton land book, all real estate, has declined by 3.71% to $14.7 billion. So that is a slight decrease, and it is something of a trend that we've seen for over the last 3 years.
So this is the third year in a row of declines.
That's correct.
And have they all been in that 3% range?
All roughly. And actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about different set of numbers in a minute. But we really look at the taxable value, and this year the taxable value was 4.4, minus 4.4.
Okay.
Then last year it was 1.7, minus 1.7, and the year before that, minus 2.7.
So this is a little bit bigger decline than we had been seeing. And I know it's important, and it's good to talk about what the truth is, but let's put it in perspective just for a second. Third year of a decline is not at all unusual among cities in the country, in Hampton Roads and Virginia. Is that correct?
That's correct. At this point, only James City County is the only other Hampton Roads community that has released their reassessment figures, and they're showing an overall decline of their taxable value 6%. So that compares to our 4.4, fortunately doing not quite.
Okay, and I'm sure most people know, but the reason for the declining values is tied naturally
to the national and regional economic downturn. And what we're seeing is not an unusual trend. Following a recession, and this is historically looking over maybe a 50-year period, after every recession, hopefully unemployment decreases, and as unemployment decreases, then the real estate values start to increase. And that there's usually a lag of about 16 to 18 months before you see the real estate appreciation following those employment improvements.
And so the flip side of this was when the recession started, the housing values and the assessment numbers didn't react immediately. So there was a little bit of a lagging indicator there. So
That's correct.
We were a little slow to see the effects of the recession, and we're going to be a little slow to see the effects of an upturn in the economy.
That's correct.
Is that right?
And added to the city, with as far as budgeting, the assessments are looking at the previous year's sales. So that puts it another 12 months back. That adds 12 more months to that lag.
Okay, so give us the big picture again. I think I interrupted you when you were starting with the numbers.
A decrease of 3.21%, with a total land book value now of 14.7. But I did allude to a 4.4 number.
14.7 is billions, right?
Billion, that's right.
A big
It's
number
a big number
still. Even though there's a decline, there's still very, very strong property values overall.
Right, and it's important to remember too, 3.21% of 14.7 billion is a big number.
Right.
So while it doesn't sound very big as 3.21, it is impact to the city.
Okay. So that's the big picture. And you were referencing, though, that the taxable drop was actually bigger than that. Explain that to us.
That's correct. The taxable drop is 4.41%, and that's because the City of Hampton, about 24% of the value of the city's land book is tax exempt due to ownership by the federal government, by the Commonwealth of Virginia, by the city, by organizations that are classified as exempt by the state code, and those would include educational institutions like Hampton University, Thomas Nelson, and then also specially designated organizations that own real estate as well.
So that is a pretty big.
That is. And then in addition to that 24, we have another 2% that comes off the taxable value because of various programs. We have tax relief programs for the elderly, disabled, veterans. Then we also have a land use assessment program for properties in agricultural, horticultural use. And then finally, a couple handsful of properties that are in a rehabilitation tax credit program where they get a credit for renovating properties.
Okay. All right, so we've gone through the big picture, and you have actually categories that you break out, and some of the categories changed by more than others, and in fact, one category actually increased, or two?
That's correct. Actually, two increased, but only one really results in a change because the exempt category was one of those that increased slightly. So, but looking at those, the largest percentage value-wise in the city is residential. That does represent 54% of the value of Hampton's real estate, and that percentage did drop by 6.1%.
So those of us who own homes are seeing yet another year of declines, which I know is a mixed bag for people, but we'll talk about that more in a minute. So the other categories are apartments?
Have multifamily, and the majority of multifamily are apartments, but that does also include trailer parks, continuing care facilities as well. And those did see a slight increase. I'm just going to get to my great chart here. Those increases were 2.38%.
Now, why do you think that is?
That's not uncommon when you find that the single-family market is not doing well, and in our case, we know it's not doing well for a variety of reasons, one of which is foreclosures. Those people that are leaving their homes naturally need to go somewhere, and many of them are going to apartments. Or
people can't qualify for mortgages. The restrictions it's tighter than it used to be, so people may be choosing to rent.
That's correct. So the demand for those multifamily units does increase, and the value hence increases as well.
Okay. So, and commercial was really almost flat.
Almost flat. It just decreased by 1.3%. One of the notable segments of that market that has been struggling is the hotel industry.
Okay.
And that has been over the last couple years with the downturn as well.
Okay, so turning to residents, 6% drop. What does that mean? How many people are getting, notices that say that their property value is down, and of those, how many people are going to see declines of, say, 4, 5, 6, or more percent?
In this cycle, with the notices that are going out, 60% of the homes decreased in value by more than 5%. So a significant number, and almost half of the owners. All owners in the city have seen their value drop by more than 10% over the last 3-year period. So most people are feeling the effects of this in one way or another.
Now, when you assess homes, you have to, by state code, come as close as you can to the actual true value of the home.
That's correct. We are by code supposed to be at 100% of fair market value. The way we do that, it's a very detailed process. The city is divided into over 350 neighborhoods, and that's how the city's real estate is analyzed. within each of those neighborhoods. We then look at the sales that are occurring in those neighborhoods. And we're looking at the sales compared to the assessments. And that gives us what we call an assessment sales ratio. So every time a property sells, we look at what the assessment was and then divide it by the sales price, and that gives us that ratio. And we want to be at 1 or 100%. In a market that's going up, as we experienced back in the early 2000s, the sale prices were often more than the assessments, which gave us ratios less than 1. So we were increasing assessments then to get back to that 1. In the current market, we're seeing the sales prices less than the assessments, so we're having to bring the assessments down to get the assessments under 1.
And you all have a very good track record, at least for the past 2 years. I looked at those numbers and you were at 99 and 100 point something. I mean, really within 1 percentage point of where you're supposed to be. That's a pretty amazing accuracy record, actually, especially in a volatile market.
Right. It is something that we're very happy with. We have a lot of excellent reporting tools that help us really analyze and then set the assessments as accurately as possible. So, and those numbers that we get measured by, that is an audit process that the State Department of Taxation undertakes. So they are doing that independent of the city.
Okay, but one of the challenges you've faced is that there aren't as many home sales, and you don't have the kind of data you used to have to work with.
That's correct. 5 years ago, we had over 6,500 sales, 6,500 transfers to work with. This year we have about 3,000. And of those 3,000, we then have to take out the foreclosures, we have to take out short sales, we take out family transfers, and then this year we were left with just over 500 sales.
Wow.
So we're using 500 sales to estimate the value of over 50,000 properties. So oftentimes, we might have neighborhoods that don't have any sales for analysis in them, and we'll have to then look to comparable neighborhoods to use the data from those neighborhoods for what the decisions we make in the neighborhoods without data.
So tell me just a little bit about that process, how you go about figuring out what the value change should be in a given neighborhood.
Well, the first step of the process is the appraisers, and we do have 13 appraisers within our office. They are all licensed by the state of Virginia, so they are of the same qualifications that if you're going for a bank loan and you have an appraisal done for that, our appraisers here at the city have those same qualifications as an appraiser doing those assignments. But they begin the process by going out in the field and verifying the data. We drive through the neighborhoods. We use something called pictometry, which is aerial photography that allows us aerial views of homes to get to backyards that we maybe can't get to because they're fenced off. So we are really able to get a good handle on the data and improve the quality of our data over time. Once the data is in correctly, we know that we can treat everyone fairly and equitably, and then we look at the way the houses are currently priced in their assessments. And we have a variety of reports. I have a folder here. This is a folder for just one of the 350 neighborhoods. It has about an inch of papers here. And this is just an example of what we go through in that appraisal process. But we have price per square foot reports to compare the equity of all of the homes on a per square foot basis. We have sales reports to see what the sales evidence is indicating as far as the price per square foot. So lots of information to work from.
That really is a lot of compilation of data. I mean, you do an amazing job of trying to pull those numbers, and your ratio suggests that you're doing it pretty darn well. I do think, though, one of the things I hear from people is that they want their assessment to come in low, and then when they go to sell the house, they want that number to come in high. It really is pretty much the same number, at least in Hampton and for the past 2 years. So what this means for people is that their main investment, for most of us, their house, is actually declining in value. Now, before these 3 years of declines, there was a heck of a run up. So in some ways, do you think this is sort of a market correction what do you see that meaning for people as far as what's going to happen over the next few years? I know I'm asking you to look in a crystal ball, and that might not be fair. But
well, we'll look into the crystal ball, and again, if you look historically at what has occurred, once employment tends to improve, then the values begin to appreciate. And I think what we're beginning to hear from economists is that employment is at least stabilizing or improving.
That's good news, yeah.
Hopefully within the next 12 to 18, 16 to 18 months, we will start to see that same stabilization in the real estate market. Another important factor, there are very many foreclosed properties available still right now, and as time goes on, that supply will diminish, and hopefully that will help invigorate the market to some level of appreciation, moderate appreciation again.
Okay. So as a residential homeowner, and I don't have my card yet, but I've looked on your map, and my neighborhood seems to be one of the one that hit a big decline. What I need to remember is the value of my house at any given moment doesn't really matter until I go to sell it. So people who've experienced declines, it doesn't mean that that's going to be the number when they do go to sell. It's just a little bit of a chilling impact.
Correct. And this is an ongoing process. Once we finish the reassessment, the appraisers are already beginning to analyze the sales that have come in since January 1 to start preparing for next year, so we can see what adjustments need to be made again.
Wow, it really is a continual process then for you and your staff. You do have a couple of dates, I think, to throw out. Maybe we can put them up on a slide later. But for homeowners who get that card and are not happy, either they think it's too low or they think it's too high, there is a process by which they can appeal.
That's correct. And the cards will be going out in the mail on February 15th. They should be in mailboxes or shortly thereafter. There will be a 30-day period to appeal to our office. We call it the office review period. And you can do that by completing an application. The applications are available. You can come in and pick them up by hand from our office. We can fax you a copy. They're available online. We can drop one in the mail, whatever is easiest. But in that application, we ask you to tell us what you think the assessment should be, and then provide some evidence. If there are some sales that have occurred that you think support your argument, or if there are other properties in your neighborhood that you feel are treated more favorably than yours, provide those so we can get your property equalized with that or those properties. And then, of course, if you think we have incorrect data, if we maybe have an area that's showing as finished in the city records and it's indeed not finished, we can correct that and make an adjustment as well.
Okay. Now, when you look overall, were there very many trends? I mean, were you able to say, like I know last year when I looked at the map, sort of waterfront areas may have held their value for longer, or certain neighborhoods that had something in common changed up or down? I looked at the map this year and I really didn't see anything.
There really is not. It really is a mosaic with no pattern at all. There are increases and decreases of varying amounts in waterfront, not by price range. It's not that
it's not big houses fell
right,
more.
Or moderate, middle-ranged priced homes. Really no significant pattern.
Now, one thing you did note, which I find interesting, is that the undeveloped land either held or increased its value.
That's correct.
What does that mean for the city?
I think it probably looks to the fact that developers are always looking to the future. So I think it's hopefully a point of optimism that people still see value and more value in those undeveloped pieces. So
as we do come out of this recession, we should expect or think it's likely that some of those developments could begin to occur and that things are ready to be regenerated a little bit.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Is there anything I forgot to ask that you want to add?
No, well, just one additional item. If folks do go through our appeal period and they're dissatisfied with the outcome of that, we do have a secondary appeal period, and it's called the Board of Review. And similarly, the applications are all available in the same ways that the office review applications. So just keep that in mind as well.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming by today. I know this is a topic that matters to how many parcels of house did you review? I mean, 50,000?
50,000, that's correct.
So that's a
50,000
lot of people
properties.
who own their homes and who care a lot about the value and the future and what it means to them and to their tax bill and to their pocketbook. So thank you very much, Brian, for coming by.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and look for another episode of Round Robin.